Hi guys, good morning and welcome. It's great to have everybody here in a physical event space. We are here today for the Me Energy Innovation Hub Leadership Talk, the first leadership talk that we're hosting. And this topic is on shaping the future of energy innovation. I think for us here at the Me Energy Innovation Hub, this is obviously a topic that's very close to our hearts and something that we're trying to work on a lot. I think for all the speakers here, it's something that's super important to them, and I think for all of the guests here, it's something that's important to you, and I think frankly it's something that's important to humanity as a whole. I would like to start off by apologizing. Mr. Hussein Al Mahmoudi, our CEO, is not able to make it today. He has sent a short video message for everyone, which I will play now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for being part of this event today. To our distinguished guests and speakers, I regret not to be able to be with you in this exciting event today, but due to my health, I could not make it. But as SRTIP, we are very excited to have this event. And our objective at SRTIP to be a catalyst and a platform for innovation, to foster a private-public partnership and create innovations in key sectors that enable our economies. Today's session will discuss innovation in energy, and we could not find better speakers than you to address this topic. So, without further ado, I would like to wish everyone a good session. Enjoy your time and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
So I know Hussein dearly wanted to be here. Unfortunately, couldn't make it, but he will be watching from home. We will jump straight into it in the essence of time. So our first panel is the status of energy innovation and technology transfer in the MENA region. And us here at the Me Energy Innovation Hub for our first leadership talk, we are truly, truly honored with the panel that we have. It's a group of extremely impressive group of individuals, and we thank them for their time in what I'm sure is a very, very busy schedule. So without further ado, we'll announce the first panel, and if they can join me up here. First, Mr. Majid Jafar, the CEO of Crescent Petroleum. Mr. Yusuf Al Ali, the Assistant Under Secretary for the Ministry of Energy. Mr. Michael Bucher, the Senior Vice President of Finance for Siemens Energy. And Mr. Fahmi Al Shawa, the founder and CEO of Amensa.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Your Excellency. Yesterday, I was taking notes, trying to do the intro for the distinguished panelists, and I realized if I want to go through their accomplishment and achievement, I'll probably be here all day. So I've tried to pick the highlights, and this does no justice. We have Mr. Majid, who's the CEO of Crescent Petroleum, the oldest private oil and gas company in the region. He's also the vice chairman of Crescent Group. He sits on various boards and advisory panels, including the Atlantic Council, International Energy Agency, World Economic Forum. He's also a board of fellow at the Harvard Medical School. Mr. Yusuf Al Ali is leading the sector in water, electricity, and future energy affairs in the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure. Through his role, he combines innovation and techno-commercial feasibility. Prior to that, he was the executive director of Masdar's Clean Energy Unit. He has over 18 years of outstanding energy and petrochemical industries experience. We also have Mr. Michael Bucher, who's the Senior Vice President of Finance, Middle East Siemens. He started his career as a lawyer, focusing on investment and securities law. During his career with Siemens, he's done numerous successful M&A transactions, and he was promoted to become co-head of Siemens Global M&A Department. He came to the region in 2018 as the CFO of Siemens Energy, and he led the region through the deepest transformation for Siemens since its inception. So without further ado, I will jump right into the questions. I want to start with you, Mr. Majid. First question, how important do you see the cooperation between government, academia, and private sector to push forward innovation? Where should the focus be?
Thank you. So it's great to be here. And congratulations on the Energy Innovation Hub, which I think is very timely and extremely relevant to the topic of innovation in the energy space here in the region. So the magic can and should be happening at the intersection, as you mentioned, between academia, private sector, and government policy. In a lot of the world, I find it's not happening at the moment, and you're ending up with silos. And the topic of energy is becoming politicized in many countries, whether that's in Europe or it's mainly in the Western world. And you're seeing pledges of carbon neutrality, net zero, but then the follow-up in terms of a strategic plan to get there is not always happening. There's a lot of great research that goes on in universities around the world, but the mechanisms to bring that into application and scale are not always there. And for that you need government policy. And so I think here we are blessed in a way, geographically, first of all, the UAE and our region being at the meeting between West and East, and ultimately it's the economies of the East which are driving the growth, GDP growth, the energy demand, and the emissions, the CO2 emissions as a result. We also have, of course, the stability, the capital, as well as an energy strategy. The UAE, I think, is the only country that I can think of that has a clear energy strategy for 2050, how it's going to get there, and the energy mix with roughly 40% renewables, complemented by roughly 40% of natural gas, and then nuclear is important. We've also been pioneers here with nuclear energy. So it's not being ideological about picking this or that, it's about having a strategic plan to get there. So I think this hub here at AUS is very timely because it enables not only development of technologies which might be developed through research here in the UAE, but it also enables you to bring in research from other parts of the world and have a pilot project here and start to test something at scale. Of course, we've got great other initiatives in the country, also in Dubai, Masdar and Abu Dhabi. So we have that ecosystem now to start scaling up these energy innovations that the whole world needs, as well as our own region.
Yeah, thanks. And yes, definitely we're seeing more of that. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Youssef, building on that, what is the strategy or the roadmap and objective of the UAE government in pushing this innovation? We heard from the private sector the importance of it, and how do you see the UAE pushing forward?
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me to this beautiful event. Actually, I was discussing with my colleague Majid. This is probably our first event after a very long time. It's very important to connect with people and to speak directly to our audiences and discuss our important issues. Again, building on what my colleague Majid mentioned, UAE has a clear strategy that was issued in 2017. I'm referring to the energy strategy. And this strategy have very ambitious targets. We aim to increase our clean energy share to 50%. Out of this 50% by 2050, by the year 2050, out of this 50% target, we'll have 44% that will come from renewable energy. In order to achieve this objective, a lot of innovation need to happen because the nature of renewable energy being intermittent source will require innovation in battery storage, innovation in thermal storage, innovation on how we design our grids and design our operations. Beside the energy targets that we have, we also have very ambitious targets when it comes to energy efficiency. We target to reduce our consumption by almost 40% if you compare it to our business as usual by the year 2050. So all these targets together cannot be achieved without innovation. UAE is well known in the renewable energy sector and in the power sector in general to be one of the first countries that takes innovative steps. So when it comes to our power sector, we were one of the first in the region to go for the privatization. This itself opens a lot of opportunities for the innovators from the private sector, from other social, from the population of the UAE. So this gives a lot of opportunities. Besides that, then we started our ambitious renewable energy target that we were again one of the first to use the first technologies in this regions, concentrated solar, photovoltaic, and this itself came with a close coordination with the academia. So we've seen together new institutes that are focused on new energy, on smart innovation, on different aspects that just came because of this sector. We've seen Masdar Institute, we've seen Khalifa University, we've seen the special programs in EUS here in Sharjah, and we've seen this beautiful organization here where we are hosted today. So innovation is part of our DNA. I would like also to give certain example about cooperation with academia. So in the UAE energy targets or energy strategy was issued in 2017. It's due for revision next year, and this revision is happening today with Khalifa University. This is another example where we try together to work closely with our academic institution in building our future. So I hope I answered the question about academia. Besides that, of course, being part of Masdar, I know that Khalifa University, or before Masdar Institute, was involved in many important studies that is linked to the power sector and linked to the future needs. So example, the UAE Atlas. So Khalifa University was the first who issued an atlas for this region, I think 12 years ago. This helped also a lot of developers, a lot of institutes, a lot of local power operating companies to have a better visibility about the future renewable energy projects. So this link is happening. However, I think we should all together work to find more venues for closer cooperation and to have our academic programs adjusted to suit our future needs in the UAE.
Thank you. And what's interesting actually is a lot of governments come up with these initiatives and these programs, and the UAE have actually put it into action. Michael, with Siemens, you actually collaborated with DEWA to create the first solar-driven electrolysis hydrogen facility in the Middle East. And currently, as we speak, you're leading a government and academia, working with leading government and academia institutions, including Khalifa University, Masdar, and so on, to develop electrolysis facility to provide green hydrogen for the transport industry. We'd love to know, from your insights, what's making this partnership work? What insights can you give? Because these are real examples that are not just in terms of planning and in terms of objectives. We're seeing materialization of these.
First of all, good morning, everybody, also from my side. It's a pleasure to be here. And a lot has been said already about the UAE as being a frontrunner, an innovative frontrunner, with a vision and with a plan. So what has actually made this pilot a successful one is exactly this. A couple of years ago already, when nobody was really thinking about hydrogen as being an important energy carrier, there were a few individuals sitting together and they were thinking that must be something to look into. And what we did is actually we partnered with Expo, we partnered with DEWA and looked into a potential cooperation that evolved into the existing physical pilot that has been inaugurated just 2 weeks ago. And what it took was actually people, it took ambition, and at the end of the day it takes also capital. And this is where all the the magic comes together, and this is where also academia is going to play a role. With Siemens Energy, we always apply science to make it real. We want to make something relevant, and innovation has to start with something that is going to become relevant. Is it economically feasible? At the beginning, maybe not. Is it technically already advanced? Maybe not. So this is why we have to try. And with the right partners, with the right people, you will be ready, and you will be able to try. And the pilot that was just now inaugurated is of course not the perfect version of a scalable product. But we have with DEWA somebody who is able to apply science in scale. We have with Siemens Energy a partner that is able to scale up industrial products to significant volumes globally. And we have a government that has a vision to establish a hydrogen-based, export-oriented economy. And this is what it takes, and this is also where the academia again plays in, because we want to make sure from all those three angles that we are establishing also a knowledge-based economy here. And knowledge, of course, again comes back to people. So with all those ingredients and with our clear ambition also as Siemens Energy to support UAE with this path forward, we will see a lot of interesting projects and potentially also derivatives from this first core to come and to develop going forward.
Thank you. I want to come back to you, Mr. Majid. You get a global perspective, and we talk about transformation and innovation. From everything you see across the world and what you see in the region, do you think we're on par or in terms of your views on the regional technology adoption, in terms of innovation? Where do you see the region stand today?
So I think our region obviously has a lot of challenges. Looking at the wider Middle East region, whether that's water, environmental issues, refugee issues, conflicts, and of course COVID-19 has hit the whole world hard, and including our region. So there's a lot to be dealing with. Having said that, I do see our region as being at the forefront of uptake of new technologies, particularly in the GCC, UAE and the GCC, but even wider afield. Our universities are still developing, and here in AUS you have a prime example of one that went from a standing start fairly recently, as universities go, to being a regional and a world leader in many different fields. So I think the outlook is positive. The research agenda is important. It's only just started to become front and center. So far, universities have mainly focused in our region on graduates and education, let's say. The research agenda, and again, the UAE at federal level, Sharjah, Dubai, Abu Dhabi and others have realized the importance of research, raising money for research, and having more graduate programs, PhD programs. So I think it's coming together. There's still a long way, but as I said, innovation is not only about creating the new technology or the IP. It is also about adopting. And I think that's an area where we can even move faster. What I'm seeing in many other countries where the technology development may be in place, but the government policy is not aligned with adoption. And the capital, as was mentioned, is not being deployed. So a lot of technologies, for example, in the energy space, there are buzzwords every year. At the moment, the big buzzwords, hydrogen, of course, carbon capture is still very important. Nuclear is being developed here in the UAE. Many other countries, unfortunately, are turning away from it. I think that's a mistake as part of a clean energy future. That's my view. But there are those who are, against nuclear. So I think that these all require proving up at scale, which require patient capital and the right government policies. Just saying, making a pledge for 2050 or 2060 and mentioning some technologies which are not yet proven at scale and then doing nothing to get them there is not going to be enough. And as we've heard here, that action is already being undertaken with for example, the hydrogen project which was mentioned.
I couldn't agree with you more. One of the things we're a technology company in the energy sector, and today I'm proud to say 70% of our employees are actually graduates from UAE universities, which is phenomenal. 10 years ago, this wouldn't have been the case. The second part of what you mentioned, I'd like to ask Mr. Youssef is, from your perspective, how is the government, we understand the objectives, how is the government taking an active role in pushing this? Do you believe its role is more to lead these initiatives or actually to empower the private sector? What's the thought process behind it?
I think a very important role that the ministry is taking is to set the strategies and set the targets where what UAE wants to achieve in the next decades. So this is an important aspect. And besides setting the targets, then as a ministry, we need also to work in parallel on the regulation side to allow regulations and policies to allow private sector to flourish, to allow also the academic side to adapt with the requirements. So let me give you an example on what we want to do. For example, hydrogen. Hydrogen is a decent technology. Everybody talks about hydrogen, the different colors of hydrogen. We know green hydrogen is still too far from commercial implementation. We think there will be a market for blue hydrogen. We think UAE is very well positioned to be a producer of blue hydrogen, considering that we have the natural gas, we have a potential offtake for the CO2, so we can be a good producer for blue hydrogen. So our role in the ministry to put a roadmap for the United Arab Emirates, what we want to achieve. You know, it's not only about being a producer of hydrogen. It's a new industry that will develop. What UAE can do more in this new industry, we can be a producer of electrolyzer technologies. We can cooperate with companies, leading companies in this sector to be a producer of these technologies, to be a source for R&D of these technologies. I think the ministry has a big role to play here. So another example that I want to mention, for example, renewable energy. We were one of the first to adopt the renewable energy technologies. We built many projects. We have huge capacities. Today we have a huge capacities. We have a huge plan, but we didn't do a lot on the industrial side. There is a domination. Most of the products is being produced in China. They are more cost effective. It's too late for us to come and produce, for example, panels, but we can maybe think about producing batteries, producing certain elements and products that we can compete in. So the ministry role is to set the targets, put the strategy, roadmap/strategy, to think about the other part of the story, other part of the value chain, to give support to the private sector to innovate, to develop, to build capacities, to also try to coordinate with the other ministries within the federal government, also to create programs, educational programs to support these new sectors to come.
Thank you. Mr. Michael, we'd love to talk about, I mean, Siemens is the world leader in driving digitization in this sector. And we know the importance of it. Do you have any examples? Like, we'd love to hear about projects you guys are working on in the region, outside the region. Just give a bit more sort of enlightenment of what's coming.
Happy to do so. Let me just come back to one point that was mentioned before, because I want to round it up with an angle that is important for the conversation when it comes to innovation and industrialization. That is a long-term perspective in terms of stability when it comes to the frame conditions. Any research program, any scale-up is a matter of, say, 5 to 15 years. You can slice it, but you still need to have a long-term, stable trajectory. And that is a major role an economy and governmental combination that is probably unique in the world that you find here can play. And that is using its own industrial capacities and its own operations and its own regulatory frame and its political weight globally to produce and generate exactly this stability. And this is a pledge I would want to make that we are going to see this, that the demand that's being created regionally and globally is also used to start up new technologies like hydrogen, give it an offtake, so to speak, a stable start, and when the scale comes, then you can go up and become an internationally competitive, cost competitive, technology advanced exporter of such a molecule. Just to the point that were mentioned. Now, looking on the digitalization piece of it, or the digitization piece of it, a very good example of how Siemens, with its partners in the region, is working together is, besides what we have talked about, the hydrogen piece is on the pure electricity generation part of running a turbine. We have recently deployed what we call digital controller for our gas turbines, and that we have done together with DEVA as being our prime partner here in the country and in the region. And what we have done is we have actually produced a digital twin of a running system of an installed turbine that is simulating the combustion and is simulating the degradation of the operational of the operations actual and midterm. And by doing so, we were able to give the controller of the turbine new input to change its operational behavior of the turbine. The starting procedures, the running procedures, and also the fuel mix and other parameters. So this very concrete example was a joint effort with our customers and our own capacities, and we are rolling this now out in the country to different turbines. And just one turbine saves already 10,000 tons of CO2 a year by applying this technology. So another example is, and that's equally interesting, is what has already been mentioned, is the introduction of volatility and intermittency by renewable energy sources to the grid. This is an extremely complicated subject that looks easy from the outside because it's obvious, but to manage such a complexity is becoming increasingly critical, because you don't want to produce and over and underproduce and introduce to the system new volatilities that you hardly can manage. So we are working again together with DEVA, but also with our partners in Abu Dhabi, and various initiatives that are supposed to put a kind of intelligent layer on top of existing infrastructure that is digitizing and connecting existing assets to the grid, making the data becoming available, and eventually analyzing and optimizing the system altogether. So these two elements I think are relevant today, are going to be staying relevant in the future.
Which is fantastic, because I think a lot of people, when we talk about innovation in the energy sector, they think about eliminating conventional oil and gas and going into renewable. But realistically, what you mentioned is very important. I know, Mr. Majid, you have a view on this. Innovation is not about just completely replacing the conventional energy sources, but it's actually making the conventional energy sources more efficient, being able to utilize it more. I don't know what are your thoughts on this.
So I think the point Michael made is very important, that and it's not very well understood that renewables has an intermittency problem. To put it in plain language, you can't store it today for more than a few minutes. Maybe with a lot of money and investment and prototypes like Tesla and others doing, you'll get to a few hours. But that's not enough to have the entire grid depending on solar and wind full time. So for the time being, until you crack that storage challenge, which is a major challenge, you need something to be able to complement it. Natural gas is the fastest way to replace. In the West, it's been coal. The US replacing coal, the UK replacing coal has led to very fast falling of CO2 emissions. Here in the region, it's liquid fuels. We don't use coal that much, but liquid fuels like diesel, for example, fuel oil. So our own switch within Crescent Petroleum, we've been moving for decades now more and more to natural gas. We're now 85% natural gas, so our carbon intensity is half the industry average, even for the region, which is quite low. But then, as operators, we need to look how to further reduce our leakages, our environmental performance. The next step, of course, is capture and/or offsetting, so that you can achieve carbon neutrality. Now, in terms of going forward, I think you do need the complement. Our own gas production has achieved 40 million tons of CO2 emissions savings over the last decade, over the last 10 years. That's like taking all the cars of the UAE off the road for several years. And I think that's not always appreciated. There's too much ideology sometimes in the media or in politics that oil and gas is all bad. Actually, first of all, they're totally different fuels. Gas is for power and industry. Oil is normally transportation and petrochemicals. I think the fastest growing sector is making things. I mean, this whole COVID pandemic, we've been relying so much on oil products, people don't realize it, whether it's sanitizers, the masks you're all wearing, the screens that we communicate with, they're all based on oil products. Every single vaccine has glycol as a stabilizing agent, which is a petrochemical project. Not to mention that they were all flown around the world with jet fuel. I don't think, people think, oh, electric cars, you're not going to need oil anymore. It's not that simple. But I think we need to do a better job, particularly this region, given the huge resource base here, of explaining the role of oil and gas going forward in a cleaner energy future.
Definitely bad reputation. Definitely we need a good PR for the oil industry, and couldn't agree more. I mean, we can't live without the petroleum product. To close off the panel, I have a question for the entire panel, and I'll start with Mr. Youssef. Oil has been in the region for over 70 years. However, the amount of innovation and adoption of innovation has been we haven't really seen anything until probably the last 10 years. What's your view in terms of, how do I say this in not a politically correct way, but a nice way? Have you seen more innovation in the last 10 years? Why haven't we seen much more? I mean, we'd expect to be the hub of innovation in the petroleum and energy sector in the region, but we haven't. Have you seen a big move in the last 10 years? And if we haven't, why hasn't there been a big push? Sorry, I know the question is a bit...
I think that the oil and gas sector, if you look at the oil and gas sector for UAE, we are among if you compare us with others in the world, we have the lowest carbon footprint when it comes to our operations. And also another angle that I would like to highlight, when it comes to power generation, relying on natural resources, we are mainly, I think, 99 based on natural gas. And this means the carbon footprint of our conventional power generation is among the lowest. And when you start looking at innovation, we have the highest efficient turbines. So we are talking about efficiency of 60 plus percentage that operates here based on natural gas. So this itself, it's an innovation. So the use of gas, the efficiency, we started from 40% or lower. Today we are achieving 60% efficiency in the use of natural gas. If you look at our oil and gas sector, we were among the first who banned gas flaring. We went then to another step, zero flaring. Now we are going to more steps. We started building the first commercial carbon capture plants in Abu Dhabi. We have a Riyadh plant that captured 800,000 tons of CO2. ADNOC recently announced the first blue ammonia project. So a lot of innovation happens in the oil sector, and I believe UAE is leading innovation. We are one of the first who started the implementation. One thing else I would like to highlight while we are here in Sharjah, just few kilometers from us, you can go and visit Bia waste treatment complex. So beside the segregation, beside the recycling that happens to the material, we are building the first commercial waste-to-energy plants in this region. So UAE is always the first. UAE is always leading the innovation, oil and gas sector, in power sector, so in all sectors.
And that's fantastic to hear. A question I want to go back to Mr. Majid. How can we take what's being applied here and adopt it globally or regionally? How do we actually take, because like you said, we are innovating a lot in the UAE, probably not as, probably the rest of the region isn't doing as much. How do we get this message out more aggressively?
So I think ultimately adoption is going to require the market. So it's when you've proven something at scale, that it works, that it's commercially viable, then you need the innovation also on the regulatory side. You know, the government policy and system that's going to enable that technology that you've already proven at scale to be adopted more widely. And that will be done on a country-by-country basis. This is why I think, in a way, the whole country here can be like a lab, but at scale. That's what's needed. I mean, you start with the lab at the university level, like here, but then to do something that actually works for an electricity utility authority at scale and show that it works, and then it can be adopted elsewhere. And each other country would then need the right regulatory framework to enable that.
Great, thank you. Mr. Michael, companies across the world allocate a significant budget into research and development, and Siemens does that. Do you see that actually, how do you see us benchmarked with the rest of the world in terms of regional companies investing in R&D? Because that's a primary pillar.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to concur with Majid on the gas part, and I would like to bring it together with the innovation piece and also the commitment and capital that goes into those new initiatives. It is very important, and this is what I noticed also here in the leadership, that we don't discriminate by technology advancements. We need to generate technology that is available to broader populations across the region that are not as rich and as advanced as UAE is, and need to make sure that those countries, those economies can follow. I'm talking about countries like Iraq, I'm talking about countries like Libya, Yemen, Sudan, who are just purely entirely without electricity and energy. And we need to make sure that those are being part of the transformation that the whole economy has to go through. And the good thing is I see UAE being very active in this and making sure that neighboring countries can follow, which is very helpful and is very natural actually to the UAE. Secondly, innovation. And this is where UAE is also leading the path, and we very much encourage to continue to do so, is a broader exercise. It's an exercise that goes beyond technology development. It goes in the area of attracting or producing a frame or generating a frame that is attractive to capital, that is attractive to FDI, that is attractive to companies to locate resources in this particular geography where people are feeling comfortable, they're feeling safe. They have the feeling they are appreciated and welcome. It's an open society with a positive attitude towards any religion, and by that dimension is also a core of a potentially growing and developing society. And the last but equally important piece is the factor of the commitment, the pure capital commitment that comes together with all kinds of initiatives. I spoke with Etihad Credit Insurance the other day, who are going to put new programs in place to make sure that exporting is being supported with the respective financial mechanisms. So all this together will make the difference and will also attract us and allow us to deploy our most advanced technologies here, our most talented engineers, and then find the right partners to continue the journey in innovation.
Thank you. I know we have time restrictions. I want to be aware of your time. First, I want to thank you a lot. To be honest, this is a very important message, understanding what the achievements the government has done in the UAE, how the private sector actually sees everything developing, and how companies are actually doing live projects. again, so much we've learned today, and this is very important. I really want to thank you for your time, because people knowing what's happening and understanding the process is very interesting. Um, I have actually a question that just came to ask you. Closing, if you have any remarks to talk in general about how would you encourage the Energy Hub or someone like the Sharjah Research, Technology, Innovation? What role would you want them to provide to be able to sort of advance everything we've talked about today? Open session.
No, for me, I will think about it. It needs to be sustainable economically. It needs to serve the business, serve the need. So I would expect from the academic side, from the research R&D center, to focus on solving the problems. You know, we have decent technologies that are operational. We face a lot of challenges. So, for example, cleaning of photovoltaic. The interruption happens and weather forecast. A lot of challenges facing the sectors that requires investments in R&D to find practical solutions. I would expect more to get support in practical in solving problems rather than early stage R&D development. So I don't think we're not into 10 years and 20 years R&D development. I think the business needs a lot of support to resolve the problems. Projects that can get done in 1 year to 2 years maximum to find solutions to help the business.
One last addition to what you've said also from the industrial side. Make it business models, make it business cases. It needs to be something that generates a return economically. Otherwise, it's not gonna work. As simple as that. Innovation is also about business models. Think about how to change go-to markets, how to change revenue models, because that goes together with technology. So make it a broader exercise and keep connecting with guys like us, and we'll be good.
That's why I went last, so I can agree with what they said, which I do, of course, with both Yusuf and Michael. So I think Yusuf's point, define actual problems which are going on today, and then come up with, solutions for them. And they could be problems at local and regional level or global level, like storage, for example. So plan it through that lens. And then echoing Michael's great point, you could have business plan competitions, and you could increase the connections with venture capital, whether regionally, globally, to actually come and invest in these, business models to try and scale them up. And the other point I would add is, I think it's important to reach out to and connect with all the universities in our region, in the wider region, which may have departments working on this topic of energy, so that you're really a hub for the whole MENA region, as the name suggests, not just for Sharjah or even the UAE.
So if I'm going to put Hussein on the spot and say if there's an ask from him that we hold him accountable for. He's not here, so he can't hold me accountable for it. Your ask would be to reach out to academia across the region and to make sure that startups in this start looking at it commercially. Is that fair to say that's your ask? I want an ask from each one of you before we leave. So if you want to add to anything, it's the one chance. It's recorded. He's going to have to abide by it and deliver it. So, Mr. Yusuf, what would you ask Hussein today if he is to do something to deliver that, to help your vision?
Again, to thank him for organizing this event. I think we have a lot of areas that requires innovative centers, and I think he can do a lot. Look at our innovative projects. Look around you here in Sharjah and in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. You will find a lot of challenges that requires R&D, requires this group of smart people in the center to work on it.
Thank you. Mr. Michael, your chance for an ask.
Yeah, the first ask I would like to make is get healthy soon. So make sure that you're coming back in good health and full strength, and continue what has started here. That's my pledge. Just keep the course and continue with all the good help of everybody the journey.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. And thank you, Sharjah Research, Technology Innovation Park, and Hussein for putting this.
Been leading for the last 10 years, mainly in wind technology, where we have supported United Kingdom, Germany, and Netherlands. Mr. Majid, you have, I seen you made an emphasis around policies and several times. Can you elaborate more where you see some of the G7 commitment when it comes to net zero by 2050?
Yeah, so very good scene setter. So the problem, the basic problem with climate change, it's a global commons problem, but our global system is based on nation states acting within their borders and in their own interests. So, as you said, the CO2 is about a global stock that sits there for a very long time. The vast majority of that stock was put there by the OECD, and the G7 is a big part of that. But they now have post-industrial economies, so their emissions have actually been falling for, in Europe's case, at least 30 years. In the US's case, a lot in the last 10 years, thanks to shale gas and renewables. But basically because their economies are becoming service economies, not heavy manufacturing, not high energy intensity per unit GDP. So they're the ones making the pledges, but they're not where the emissions are growing. The emissions are growing in Asia, let's be clear. And the emissions are growing because Asia is burning coal. And that's not to blame Asia. Asia is where the growth of the world is. And China, India, Indonesia, these countries are burning coal for power, for energy. So I think you're starting to see, and you saw last week in the G7, a realization that we can all make pledges in the rich Western world, and we can spend €1 trillion Europe or $1 trillion in the US, but that's like moving the furniture in the bedroom when the living room is on fire. Where you need to spend the money to make the difference. That money is spent in Asia today, tomorrow Africa, that will be next, will go much further if the world is really serious about tackling climate change. In Paris, there was a commitment of $100 billion for the developing countries, which is nothing compared to what's needed. Even that 100 billion was not paid up by the rich countries of the world, which had pledged it. So you're starting to see that realization. COP26 in Glasgow is going to focus more and more on what the developing countries need. There's talk about maybe having like a global green bank, like the World Bank, but for financing energy transition in the developing world. For me, personally, that's the key. Everything you do in Europe and the US is irrelevant if you don't enable China and India to make the switch from coal today. My view is natural gas is a necessary part of that. I'm biased, I'm from that sector, and I've seen what it has done for the UK and the US, for example. And I've seen, for example, in Germany, with all respect to Siemens, it wasn't Siemens who set the German energy policy. They tried to ignore gas and also cancel nuclear and just subsidize renewables. What happened? They burnt more coal. And they actually had rising emissions for most of the last decade and the most expensive energy in the whole of the OECD. So that was actually, in my view, a failed energy policy. So that's what I think needs to happen. It's starting to happen, inshallah.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Daniel Zivietz. I started a solar company here 9 years ago. So and are very much trying to innovate in the energy sector, and are grateful very much for the infrastructure and the guidance, the vision of the leadership in the right direction. And at the same time, as a small company still, it is not easy to innovate and to grow here when the government controls a significant part of the economy, and the average project size in the solar sector here is probably, is the largest in the world. We have the 3 largest solar plants in the world under construction in the UAE. Now my question, and this is for Mr. Ali, is for Mr. Youssef, is as the federal government, you have obviously an oversight role, and much of the energy policy is by Emirate, but you also have a part of the country where the energy policy is directly under your control, the FIWA territory. I guess it's now Etihad Power. How are you encouraging the energy transition, the move to solar, storage, all of those things within the realm of Etihad Power?
Let's segregate between 2 different categories. So we have the utility scale, the large scale, that being done by the governmental entities. So we have EWIC doing this plan in Abu Dhabi, we have DEWA, we have SIWA planning this, working toward the renewable energy targets for the UAE, responsible to have batteries for stability, for different uses within the grid. So this is something going in progress, and we are going, inshallah, to hit our targets, our national targets. Another thing that is also important for us, to get the private sector and to get everybody in our society engaged in this journey. And here comes the solar rooftop system. I think you are more focused on the small systems, solar roof systems, that we have a successful program in Dubai, Shams Dubai. I think today they have maybe 50 megawatt of capacity. This is a huge capacity, a huge success.
265.
265. So it's a huge success. We want to replicate. So our role is, as a ministry, is to develop the required regulations to support this among all the United Arab Emirates. The process to develop and approve such regulation takes time within the UAE, considering the nature of federal government. So we are working on it. We acknowledge the need, and we are working to get it done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll wrap it up there. So a round of applause for the speakers and the panelists. Thank you so much for your guys' time.
CEO for BIA since 2009. He has many roles earlier with ENOC, leadership in ENOC, Nakheel, Arabia, global investment. Currently with BIA, he led different initiatives such as waste to energy, zero waste, different ventures like Eon, Evotech. He championed many green solutions in BIA. There is many. If I want to read his bio, it will take hours. So I'll move to our next speaker, Dr. Abdurrahman Al-Khaldi. Dr. Abdurrahman Al-Khaldi is currently the CTO for GE for Europe, or GE Gas Power for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Mr. Khaldi led various teams in production, service, application, repair, performance, and project engineering. Also new product innovation with GE. He led various engineering teams to produce services, and actually he's an old friend from Niskiuna, where he worked in GE Research Center. So now we can start with some questions to our panelists. So I'm going to start with actually a point that has been raised also in the first panel related to innovation. So for Mr. Khalid, innovation in energy is really needed. And I understand that BIA recently announced building the region's first solar landfill. So could you share some information about BIA working in this development and what impact it has?
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. A bit about BIA, just to understand why we announced this project for our solar landfill project. Today, as some of you might know, BIA, its core business is waste management. So here in Sharjah, we manage the waste for the Emirate, and we're the only fully integrated waste management company here in the region. So what that means, we don't just collect the waste and clean cities, we also segregate, we recycle, and we convert to energy. So we do the full chain. And we put a target for Sharjah, zero waste to landfill. We are heading towards that target. And today, so the landfill, with us achieving a target of zero waste, we have to repurpose the landfill. So now, either we could excavate that landfill, which will be too expensive, or we have to look at repurposing it. So the landfill is located in our waste management complex. So it's a 4-kilometer plot in Saj'a and Sharjah, where all our recycling and treatment facilities are located, including our waste to energy facility. So once we reach our target towards zero waste, we have to repurpose the landfill, and this is where the project, we looked at repurposing it to make it a solar farm. And this is where this project now is heading. The surface area of this project for the landfill, it's quite a large area. We will be able to generate 120 megawatts of power. And this is our second actually solar project. Our first is already installed for our new headquarters. It is much smaller. Our new headquarters is actually almost completing construction, which will be powered by renewables and will be a LEED Platinum certified building.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, I'll take with a question with Dr. Khaled regarding hydrogen and carbon capture. I know that for waste management, we need to do some carbon capture. So how much potential do you see hydrogen, carbon capture, and storage hold in helping accelerating the region energy transition and decarbonization effort?
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for Sharjah for hosting us. Really, I appreciate the invitation, and best of luck for Hussein and the team. You mentioned energy transition, you mentioned storage, hydrogen, and carbon capture. Let's separate it a little bit. There is definitely a need for energy transition in the world and in UAE and the Gulf. We think that renewables will be part of that transition, definitely. But it cannot be alone. People think that they fantasize about renewables being 100% of the mix. This cannot happen from a scientific point of view. It's not that we don't wish this to happen, and I'll talk more about it later on. When we talk about energy transition, especially in this region, which is rich with hydrocarbons, we can talk about two aspects. We can talk about the use of low carbon fuels in running the gas turbines. This is through either hydrogen or other low carbon fuels, and the hydrogen color doesn't matter in this case. It can be green, it can be blue. We hope it can be either that. And then the other aspect of decarbonization would be the carbon capture piece. Now, why this is important for this region, this country? If you think we've been very relevant in the energy business for the past 60 to 70 years. Our hydrocarbon reserves cannot be displaced simply. We have a play, and we can have a continuous play in the energy market in the world for decades to come. And why is that? Because we can easily turn that hydrocarbons into into blue hydrogen, and we can use the CO2, the carbon that you can get out, in order to enhance your oil recovery or gas recovery. So this is one point. And also with the advent of carbon capture technology in the world, which you need in any case for blue hydrogen, this can pave the way for really near zero carbon energy and still keep this region very, very much at the forefront of energy, not for this region alone, but for the world. As you know, Asia is looking for shipments of hydrogen and ammonia from this region. This tells you that this region can continue to play a strategic role in the energy transition, not only for UAE and Gulf, but for the world as a whole.
Okay, thank you. This is actually bring me to the question how, since energy is important to the region and how this region can contribute to the energy sector, how BIA can be part of this. I mean, I know that there is a new development for waste to energy. How did the company get started on this track and what has been achieved? Will waste to energy play an important role in securing our energy needs here in the area?
So as I was discussing earlier, in Sharjah, we set a target for zero waste. How do we reach zero waste to landfill? So today we have several facilities already operating in Sharjah: a material recovery facility, tire recycling facility, construction demolition waste recycling, industrial wastewater. We have 9 different facilities where we have reached today a diversion rate of 76% today, which is the highest in the Middle East, away from landfill. So that 24% that is remaining, this is what will go to our waste to energy facility. This waste to energy, this initiative, we started approximately 5 years ago. We formed a joint venture with Masdar, a company called the Emirates Waste to Energy Company, which will be developing waste to energy projects not just in the UAE but also in the region. So the first project is almost actually nearing completion right now. It will be able to process 300,000 tons of waste annually and will be generating 30 megawatts of power. We have in place a power purchase agreement with Siwa. And this project is again the first, not just in the UAE but in the region. Dubai and is already also started now a waste to energy project. They have started the construction. Abu Dhabi is also announced. Saudi Arabia is announcing several waste to energy projects. So this partnership with Masdar, we're looking at being a regional leader in developing waste to energy projects. And the project commissioning will be towards the end of this year. And this project is not a project only for a source of renewable energy. It's also to eliminate waste in a sustainable way. So there is more objective than just energy.
So, I mean, the energy coming from this waste can be, how much it can contribute to the energy sector?
So this is 30 megawatts of power. This is and this is what we have already signed the power purchase agreement. So that could be enough to power around 28,000 homes. So this is our first waste to energy project we have.
Okay. Thank you. Actually, this brings me to the next question for Dr. Khaled regarding the major renewable energies, such even waste. What are the challenges that it has that hydrogen stand to address? I mean, how this renewable energy can be useful for hydrogen?
So renewable energy right now, as we know it, stands with solar, wind, is based on inverter-based power conversion. While gas turbine technology, steam turbine technology sits on large rotors, we call it rotational inertia, in a grid for grid stability. Of course, in renewables, there is the issue that Majid and others talked about, the intermittency, but this is not the only piece. The other aspect of renewable, and we've seen this in countries where renewables became bigger and bigger part. In addition to the intermittency, you have what we call softening of the grid. The fast response to grid interruption becomes less available if you take out the higher rotational inertia that gas turbine technology can bring. Now, hydrogen, I just want to mention, because our lovely German competitors talked about hydrogen, but I want to mention something about our experience with hydrogen. We've been burning hydrogen for 30 years. We have over 80 units running different variation of hydrogen, all the way up to 100% hydrogen. We have over 6 million hours of burning hydrogen. But hydrogen is a tricky molecule. It's the most abundant molecule in the universe. But unfortunately, on Earth, it shows up in either hydrocarbons or with water. The issue with water, and this comes to the green, the bond in water is very strong. What would it mean? This is physics, this is not OEM. This means to break that bond, this is a very stable molecule. You need to spend a lot of energy. And that's the price you'll have to pay. Of course, with SMR, going back to oil and gas, where I think oil and gas industry will continue to be important. The SMR technology, which produces hydrogen for blue hydrogen for power or transport, and at the same time utilizes the CO2 for better gas and oil and gas recovery, that's a win-win situation. But here's what's tricky about hydrogen. Hydrogen carries 1/3 of the energy of natural gas. This is physics. So in order to run at 100% hydrogen, you need almost 3 times the volume as compared to natural gas. But this is not it. Hydrogen is almost explosive. It doesn't burn like natural gas. The flame speed is very, very fast. It's 5 times faster than natural gas. Worse off, when it leaks, it can leak from any mechanical seal. So you have to think at higher pressure, you need to start welding instead of mechanically sealing. Even when it burns, amazingly enough, you cannot see it. Because the flame in hydrogen is ultraviolet, you cannot. So it brings in challenges, both in burning it, safety. We worry about leakages in oil and gas that might lead to a fire. In hydrogen, if you have a leakage, you have an explosion. So safety is not a secondary part of burning hydrogen. It is a primary issue. How to control the flame? Hydrogen runs higher flame. What does that mean for people who work in combustion? Higher flame means that you have to deal with NOx. Higher NOx. So yes, we solved the CO2 issue, but you cannot create a NOx issue. So you need to deal with that. You need to deal with a tricky molecule that embrittles steel, right? We have to deal with all of this. But the good thing that there are solutions that are already there, implemented.
Source.
We announced last month waste to hydrogen project, one of the first in the world and the first here in the region. So this project, we are partnering with Chinook Sciences from the UK, which is a technology provider for waste to energy solutions. And the unique thing about this project today, we looked at this looked at it at a comprehensive view for BIA. Today we have a fleet of around 2,000 vehicles. One of the main pollutants of air pollution is vehicles. So we are, on one side, we are converting our fleet to a cleaner fleet. So we looked at this project where we're able to convert waste to hydrogen. We will have a fleet of vehicles powered by hydrogen, and these vehicles will collect waste. So we are in discussions with OEMs for compactors that will be powered by hydrogen. And the same vehicles will be tipping this waste at this plant and will be fueled at the same location. So you will not be transporting that hydrogen. So it will be a full loop that we will be creating, and these will be the plant filling stations, small modular units that we can install in different locations. So it's a very innovative concept that we are developing and we announced recently, and we hope to be ready to start construction of this project by 2022.
Thank you. So now, if we go to GE, I mean, what is new technology or low carbon power generation that GE is investing in these days?
Things. And if you leave this room, I want you to remember these two. We're working on both ends of the equation. Our gas turbines are more and more will be suited to run all the way up to 100% hydrogen, irrespective of the color. You bring me hydrogen, I'm gonna burn it. So the roadmap for GE technology is more and higher blends of hydrogen. Right now we have units in UAE that already can run at 100% hydrogen. But we want the latest generation like F-class and H-class technology to also ramp up to 100% hydrogen. Being able to run at 100% hydrogen is solving half of the problem. Because the other half, find me the hydrogen, the amount of hydrogen I need to run a 9HA unit, 24 hours. By the way, the NEOM, all of you have heard about the project NEOM in Saudi. Hear this, the full daily production of hydrogen in that facility, which costs $5 billion to run, is not enough to run one 9HA. You cannot. All of that hydrogen that you're going to produce on a daily basis is not enough to power one 9HA.02 unit. I'm saying this not to discourage hydrogen. I want to bring scale to you. If you're going to move to hydrogen economy and hydrogen burning, there's a lot of hydrogen needed. Okay. And I think blue hydrogen is easier to bridge rather than green hydrogen. So this is number one. Anything that related to what we call the pre-combustion, what can you do with the fuel to run at low carbon fuel? Number two, which is more practical, think about it for this region, because it can help him, it can help him, it can help him, is how can we advance the state of the art in carbon capture? Mr. Yusuf Al-Ali talked about carbon capture in Irada. It's not a cheap solution. It requires heavy investment in CapEx and OpEx. GE is determined to invest in the carbon capture technologies for years to come. We want to make it more affordable, cheaper to run, and less energy intensive. I'll give you one example. If we have a 60% combined cycle power plant right now, top F-class in the region, and I want to carbon capture, I want to capture the carbon out of that plant and use the energy from that plant to run my carbon capture, the net efficiency of that plant will drop to 52 or 53%. That's the penalty you'll have to pay to deal with the flue gas, to pump it, to cool it, to strip it, to heat it back again and then compress. There is a tax that you have to pay. So what GE will be doing is going to invest in new technologies to make that carbon capture easier and more affordable and less OpEx intensive. That will help not only the power industry, it will help the petrochemical industry. It can help the oil and gas industry because carbon capture will be essential in order to transition into the blue hydrogen or blue ammonia realm.
Okay. Thank you. So now I'll go to Mr. Khalid. Now, what is next for BIA? I mean, how they address the waste to energy and hydrogen needs?
Well, first of all, the vision of BIA is pioneering sustainable quality of life with focusing on two main pillars, sustainability and digitalization. So today, with us reaching now zero waste, we had to look at how does BIA continue growing. One is to diversify, and one is to grow geographically. So today, we don't just operate in Sharjah, we operate across the UAE. We have 10,000 staff employed by BIA. We operate in 3 countries, in the UAE, Saudi, and in Egypt. In Saudi, we're very proud that we have won the contract for waste management for the holy city of Medina. So we are now in charge of the waste management for Medina al-Munawwara in Saudi. We have 3,000 staff in Saudi today. In Egypt, we have won the largest waste management contract in Egypt, the new administrative capital in Egypt. This project is for 15 years with a target to achieve a diversion rate of 80% within the next 5 years. So we have started operating in Egypt from March. When you're looking at diversification, we've also started investing in digital companies. We have 2 digital ventures. One is Evotech, based in Dubai, that does a lot of digital transformation solutions for public sector, including with the Ministry of Health. We have an advanced track and trace solution that we have been awarded for medicine. The other company, Relife, is actually based here in Sharjah Research and Technology Park. It's called Relife. And Relife, we have 2 platforms, Relife Market and Relife Collect. So Relife Market is a marketplace for trading material, recyclable material. We've become the biggest trader in the UAE today, so we're creating a marketplace. And Relife Collect is a platform and an app to transport bulky material and bulky waste. We also have a company called ION, which is a sustainable transport solution provider. We are active currently mostly in Abu Dhabi, but we're also in Sharjah and Abu Dhabi at Masdar City, the autonomous pods we operate. We've launched our own ride-hailing platform that is only for electric vehicles. We've installed the fastest car charger in the UAE at Yas Marina. So today we have our waste management business. We have our energy business, which I talked about with Zero Waste Solutions. We have our digital business, our consultancy, and also very soon we will also be starting a healthcare business.
Okay, thank you. So now there is a huge demand for green and renewable energy, and we can see that everyone is seeking that. So for GE, how do you see the appetite of financial institute changing to fund fossil fuel-based power projects, and what challenges does that pose?
I'm going to start with numbers, so stay with me. I know I'm going to say 3 numbers. Coal power plants, they emit around 1,000 grams per kilowatt hour on average. 1,000. An average combined cycle power plant gas is around 400, 450. The best in class, the one I told you in Hamriya, is around 350 grams per kilowatt hour. Now what we're seeing from financial institutions, and you have to appreciate where is this going. There is a lot of now push that they cannot fund projects that can produce more than 100 grams per kilowatt hour. So definitely what this means, coal plants are out completely. But this is even a challenge for gas turbine technology. If you're going to go from 350, let's say 400 grams per kilowatt hour to 100 grams per kilowatt hour, you need to take 75% of that carbon. Can we do that? Yes. Again, we go back to the pre and post. You can do it in either ways or a combination. Run this plant at 90% hydrogen. You're going to meet that number. 90% hydrogen. Or apply carbon capture technology and capture 85 or 75 of that CO2, then you're going to be financed. In reality, both will be challenging. And this brings me to the point. You all know that financial institutions, by construct, they're conservative. in terms of risk. But they're now moving at a pace in terms of decarbonization is way ahead of what the developing world can afford. This is what the team before me was discussing. It's not enough to announce the commitments, the national determined commitments of 2050. The reality is the US, the richest nation in the world right now, 40% of its power is coming from coal. 40%. And by the way, displacing that is gonna take decades. It's not easy. You know that, I'll give you, until now, there are 100 new projects of coal being erected in the world right now. This is a 150-year-old technology, and we couldn't displace it. You know what? Go and convince India to import natural gas versus running on coal. Go talk to China, right? There are realities in the world we cannot jump over. But the issue is that, I'm just putting it on the open, what we are seeing right now at General Electric, whether from the ECAs or banks, loaning banks, they're way ahead of the curve in terms of decarbonization. This is gonna put a real difficulty for developing countries to borrow capital to finance thermal power plants. And for that, we need solutions, rapid solutions for this. So I see the risk.
So this is for new projects. And what
For
about
new
financing current projects?
Well, even financing upgrades, like we have in Iraq, we've been doing financing for our upgrades. If your upgrade cannot bring in some type, I'm talking about sustaining a power plant that exists. If your upgrade cannot bring in an element of decarbonization, even that is a big challenge.
Okay, thank you. So now I'll move to one question to both of you, and this is regarding the future of the region as a whole, regarding facilitating, developing, and driving forward the importance of hydrogen and carbonization. So.
Well, I think here the UAE and the region is very clear. They've set, the UAE has a strategy for 2050 where at least 25 to 50% of all energy is from renewables. And you can see from the previous also panel, the discussion, there's a lot of initiatives here in the UAE and Saudi, and also for, in terms of also investments in hydrogen. Here in Sharjah, the project that we've talked about as BIA, the first waste to hydrogen project, so that's a new innovation that we are doing, but also there's projects have been announced in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi. So there's a lot of investment to reach the UAE agenda for energy for 2050.
So your expectation for the growth in hydrogen and in carbonization?
I think definitely here in the region, in Saudi, specifically in UAE, there is a lot of investment and growth here.
What about you, Dr. Abdulrahman?
I believe that renewables will be part of the growth of this region. In Saudi, UAE, and elsewhere. This is definitely going to be part of a growing part of the energy mix. For this region, which is rich with hydrocarbons, the advent of what we are hearing now, hydrogen and ammonia. Let me talk a little bit about why you hear ammonia. Because of the type of the molecule that we have, the hydrogen is not easily liquefiable. You need to spend a lot of energy to liquefy hydrogen. It's not like natural gas, it's even worse. To compress it and transport it is an issue. So ammonia is used as the best way to transport hydrogen overseas. That's why you see companies doing it. So whether it's blue ammonia or blue hydrogen, this is gonna keep this region relevant in the energy market for years to come. It provides a low carbon solution for the infrastructure that costs hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of gas technology. And I see a big move from liquid fuel, burning in power, more into gas. But gas becomes, instead of thinking of gas as a bridge technology, it's going to be there to stay, because investing in gas is not going to lock you in terms of carbon. As I said, gas turbine technology, they can burn hydrogen now. So you can get out of the carbon footprint very, very quickly. And with more, better carbon capture, which you need for this region for both oil and gas industry and power industry, I see this is where the future will be. Renewables, carbon capture, blue hydrogen.
So just a quick question. Do you think this will be economically driven or environmentally driven? I mean, moving to hydrogen or to CO2 capturing?
There will be, look, as you know, when President Biden came to power, his first global summit was not about Ukraine, was not about Crimea, was not about Middle East. He brought everybody to talk about environment. So it's coming, G7, you heard for the first time, if you look at the G7 community, they did not talk about ISIS or terrorism. They talk about the environment. There will be a significant push from the G7 and others to adopt more friendly environmental solutions. UAE and the region will do that, I think. It will become, right now, look, to be reality, the green hydrogen is not economical. Who would pay $30 per million BTU when you can burn gas at $4 per million BTU or $5? With the PPA and IPPs, who can change those contracts that allows these IPPs to switch to hydrogen? It's not there yet. Even blue hydrogen is not that cheap. You need to pay for the natural gas, and on top of that, you need to pay for the process to turn that into a blue hydrogen. So that's a reality. But in fact, I think the economics will be better. Environmental pressure will be stronger in the years to come. In reality, we don't have much time. I think we're doing too little, too late, and this is my opinion. Too little, too late. We cannot reverse it. We have 15 years. This is what's said, to keep the temperature at 2 degrees. The world will not be able to manage. So we need to think practically. And don't think of the world as OECD. Think about the rest of the world. Africa still is without power. 25% of Africa, there is no power, no grid. That's the reality of the world, and we'll have to deal with it.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'll open the session for question if anyone has question from the audience.
To 30% emissions improvement on this, which you can using certain types of technology. This is more than wind or solar combined, and then you don't have a problem with storage. Now, with this, do you not see that the consumers are driving this? The G7 are doing this because their nations are telling them they need to do it. Consumers are telling people to change. So do you not think governments are just reacting? So if you're talking about India, China, or even the BRIC countries, right? Let's take Brazil into this place. The consumers, the products that they are selling are now, consumers are saying, no, I want more. When I go in to a shop, you can see this in IKEA, in H&M, consumers are saying, I want more sustainable products.
I fully agree, by the way. I switched my home to green, 100% green in the US, because somebody came to me in a big mall and said, look, what do you think of I switch your energy coming to your home in your bill, where it is 100% hydrogen, 100% green energy? And I told them, sign me up. And I did that and did the switch. There will be pressure, but there are realities. Look, to erect a 2,000 megawatt power plant, it's a serious investment. Who would do that if he thinks that 10 years from now I cannot operate it? Right now, in UAE, we're erecting a supercritical coal power plant. The energy mix, the stability. Think about, look, we in UAE, I come from a country where there is intermittent power. In UAE, US, Europe, we take it for granted. Grid stability should not be taken for granted. Because once you lose that, trust me, it's going to create a lot of chaos. We enjoyed uninterrupted power in UAE and Dubai and Sharjah for a long, long time, to the extent that we don't think that we might have blackouts or brownouts, because we're used to that. Same in the US. But look what happened in Texas over the winter. Because of the way they interplayed between the wind, there is a lot of wind power in Texas. There is a lot of solar, and there is a gas. Because of that intermittency and what happened when the temperature dropped, people stayed without electricity for few days, no more than 2 hours a day. So look, there are many, many complicated, but I believe that the people, us, are powerful. We should take a stand. I love renewable energy, green energy, but I feel that gas turbine technology is going to be part of that. It can become almost green power in the next few years, and I'm a big proponent of that. That's why I'm still in this job.
Okay. One more question we can take or entertain one more question. Well, if by that we'll close, I'll thank our speakers. Thank you for your time, and wish you all the best. Thank you, all for attending. Okay.
I would like to thank all our visitors today and distinguished guests, valuable speakers for the very interesting discussion we saw today. We heard from our government officials about the plans the government has going forward to support the renewable energies and the push into the green energy and the other type of technologies. We also heard very active discussions with some of the speakers about their views of what are the challenges that we are facing on the local, the global level. Now, my name is Ali Sajwani. I am the Director of Technology Transfer and Projects at the Sharjah Research, Technology and Innovation Park. I am the overall responsible for the Middle East and Africa Energy Hub program. And I just wanted to give you a very quick brief of what we are trying to achieve with this program. So the conference which we are talking about today is one of the activities that come under the MEA Energy Hub. We have also many other activities that are happening and that are going to happen in the near future. A very key one of them which I wanted to update you is a hackathon which we have started in April. And by end of May, we managed to collect applications from university and students and professors. We have received almost 99 applications from across the globe. And we are now in the stage of shortlisting. So we're doing our due diligence, and we are going to shortlist 15 of these applications. Now, these 15 are going to participate into a 48 hours, I would say, race or a hackathon towards the end of this month, I think by next week. And then at the end, there will be a pitch date where these ideas are going to be presented to the members of the Energy Hub. Now, this is another activity that is happening in addition to the conference, which we've proudly are very proud to have you all here with us. There are also invitation for companies to come on board of this Energy Hub. We have, alhamdulillah, managed successfully to collaborate and to get the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure to be on board. So they are co-chairing the program with us. And we've spoken to many of you already, or some of your team members, of inviting you to come on board. We have, alhamdulillah, managed at least to progress into some of the discussions with some of the members. But I would like to again extend my invitation to all to come on board of this program. Without having you coming on board, we will not be able to make this program successful. So a program that eventually it is aiming for trying to collect from all these key members of the hub. Now, when I say key members, I'm talking about oil and gas, I'm talking about utilities, I'm talking also about renewable energy companies. We are trying to identify what are the list of opportunities and some of the challenges that we are facing today. We also understand that we are going to be dependent on oil and gas at least for the coming 30 years. And like from our guests today, we need to make sure that our approach towards these very vital sources of revenue and energy for us is going to be as harmful as possible to the environment and as effective and efficient as possible. So I would again like to invite all of you to join our member here. We have our, from Barabas, we have Ego and we have Isra there. They're probably going to approach you and you are very much welcome to talk to them about how you can support us. And then also I would like to say again, thank you very much for coming and looking forward for future collaboration. Thank you.